Right, let's jump into it. So good evening, everybody. I just want to thank all of the residents and staff for joining us tonight for our first Resident Advisory Board meeting for 2021. I do want to start off with a quick introduction of the Fresno Housing staff that will be presenting in this meeting. Let me see if I could share my PowerPoint really quick. 1 second. Okay, so I'm Lyric Agigam. I am Fresno Housing's policy analyst, and I will be presenting on the annual plan. We also have Juan Lopez, who's presenting information on the Homeownership Program. Yolanda Kaiser is also on, and she will be presenting on the administrative plan, which is specific to the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And we also have Hilda Reeves presenting the changes on the Acob plan, which is specific to the public housing program. We also have Spanish and ASL translators available and present. Before we jump into the presentation, I do want to note that this meeting is being recorded and streaming on our Facebook Live. I also want to know and emphasize that this meeting is strictly to discuss the changes in the agency plans that are being displayed for public comment on Fresno Housing's website. I provided the link to the webpage in the meeting invite to the RAB members. Also, please be aware that any discussing personal issues regarding the wait list or vouchers or landlords, etc., shouldn't be discussed in this meeting. It's all about the agency plans and the drafts that are presented on the website. Please remember that this will be live and published. So again, do not share personal issues with us today at this meeting. Fresno Housing staff will first present the potential changes, and then we will notify you when you can start when we can start taking questions and comments. Please remain patient as we get through the presentation first. Please use your raise your hand feature. If you have questions or comments, we will then call on you and unmute your mic to speak. This will take place after we present the information. You may not be able to get all of the questions and comments out, and it may not be answered, but if we don't answer them, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we will document them and post the answers on our agency plan website at a later date. For those watching on Facebook Live and may have questions or comments, please email agencyplans@fresnohousing.org, and we will answer any of your questions, and it will be added to the website as well on a frequently asked questions document. I do want to thank those again participating on the Resident Advisory Board this evening. We had a lot of interest in the participation this year, and participation is an important part of the potential changes we may be making for our housing programs. So again, we thank you, and we will get to your guys' questions and comments right after this presentation. So we will go to the next page. So we'll do a quick presentation overview. We will go over the background of what each plan entails. We will also jump to the timeline. We hope to obtain some feedback or guidance from you guys on the documents that we show you, especially while the plans are posted for public comment right now. And just a reminder, the public comment period does close on September 13th, and we will get into the timeline further into the PowerPoint. We'll go over exactly what the annual plan entails for 2022. And then we will touch on the proposed changes to the admin and the Acob plan. We'll just jump into what the color-coded text means. So the yellow text represents significant proposed changes. And please remember, these documents were included in your meeting invite, so that's what I'm referring to. Yellow text represents significant proposed changes, and that is defined as those that impact the eligibility and the admissions policies. The green text represents a HUD regulation or any regulatory changes. Blue text represents additional changes suggested by staff that are discretionary at a local level, permitted by HUD, and can be adopted by the boards. And then in addition, but not covered in this presentation, but included with the drafted plan documents, we are also providing some formatting and grammar items. So after we get through all of those changes, we would like to discuss with the Resident Advisory Board members and get any questions or comments down. So a little background on the plans. The agency plan as a whole informs HUD and the public of any policies, operations, funding, asset management, and program activities in place or planned for meeting local housing needs and goals. So the annual plan we will present to you guys today, but it's just little updates on progress, on any development projects that may be going on, amendments or significant changes to the admin plan or the ACOP. The administrative plan, which is what I've just referred to as the admin plan, is specific to the policies governing administration of the HCB program. And then the admissions and continued occupancy plan, which is what I've referred to as ACOP, is specific to the discretionary policies governing the public housing program. So we'll go through the timeline really quick. So June 22nd is when we presented the timeline to the board. July 27th, we presented the proposed changes and or accepted board feedback prior to posting it for the public comment period. July 30th was the first day that it was presented for public comment. The public comment period is for 45 days, and we do have it presented on the website. I did send you guys the link to the website if you guys wanted to review the full plan. August 17th, which is today, is the first RAB meeting. August 24th, which is next week, will be our board meeting when we present them with any public comments that we've received thus far, including any comments from this meeting. And then September 1st, we will have our second RAB meeting. So anybody that maybe couldn't make it to this meeting, or if you guys have any follow-up questions or comments, you guys can participate in that second meeting. September 13th, the public comment period closes. September 28th, we have a public hearing, and then that is the time we will request for board adoption. And then October 15th is the final submission to HUD. So the annual plan provides a summary of the significant changes. Those are the changes that you will see in yellow in the admin plan and the ACOP. And the details are provided in the plans themselves. And again, we'll review that in a moment. The annual plan also provides information on activities that are not included either in the admin plan or the ACOP. Most of those changes are related to like development and any updates in the progress on development. And then in the document, we also list details and changes to the homeownership program, which we will get into further detail after this slide. And then again, potential development projects that the agency may want to undertake, updates to the current projects in the pipeline as well. And then anything that we do see in pre-development, that is also listed in the annual plan. So as you can see, this document only lists existing and potential projects that the agency may eventually undertake, placeholders, so to speak. So staff presents these in broad terms to provide the agency with some flexibility. In addition, similar placeholders are used for dates of funding applications. Staff usually puts the soonest date possible, even though there may not be an application. Again, it's just to provide flexibility for the agency. Other activities in addition to the development include homeownership. Again, I touched on that a little bit earlier. We will get into the details after this slide. Progress report on mission and goals is also included in this. Finance and special projects. So our specific updates this year are adding all of the home ownership program homes to the plan so we can continue to renovate those and remove them from the asset list. We also touch on homes that will be converted to the Section 32 home ownership program. And I believe Juan will take over from here to touch on the details of Section 32 home ownership program.
Good evening, Juan Lopez, Senior Finance Manager. Tonight we'll discuss a little bit on our current homeownership program that's part of the public housing portfolio and what changes we're proposing to make to that program. We currently have, we are two agencies. We're a city and county agency, and we currently have a small portfolio of single family homes in our public housing portfolio that are part of our homeownership program. So periodically we will update our boards as well as the public on the status of those homes. We may come to the board to sell a home every once in a while. And currently we have 2 homes in the city program and 5 in the county, with all 5 of those being in the city of Sanger that reside in our county program. These programs currently operate under older regulations, and HUD has reached out to us and we've discussed the potential to convert those homes over to the newest regulations for public housing home ownership programs. It's also known as Section 32. You'll see that in the document that we posted to the public. And so part of that process is to submit an application to convert those properties over to the updated regulations. So we actually don't change the homes. So they are currently designated for home ownership, very specific homes. And so that part of it doesn't change. Families that currently reside in those units, they are not forced to move out anyway. They just operate under different regulations with some different rules that are mostly the same in our old homeownership program. But I've highlighted on here some of the key features of the updated program. And these are sort of required by HUD more or less. And so these are sort of the things that we don't really have much discretion over. So the first bullet point is families must be below 80% AMI based on their family size, unless they're currently living in the units. So again, if families are currently living in the units, they kind of get grandfathered in, so they don't have to meet that 80% AMI requirement. But if and when we do bring in new families, they have to meet the 80% AMI requirement. That's a requirement of HUD. Families must agree to participate in home ownership counseling programs, and they must complete the programs as shown by a certificate of completion. So there are a lot of home ownership programs out there, and there are a few that are actually registered as standard home ownership programs that are acceptable for a lot of lenders. So if a family completes that home ownership counseling program, it's proof to a lender that they've been educated and they're able to understand, what all goes into home ownership. So that is something that we would require of our participants, and it's really a good tool for families to be able to start the process of home ownership. Families will also have to qualify for a first mortgage with a private lender. So I'll talk a little bit about a second mortgage and the assistance that we as a housing authority provide to homeowners, but families would have to qualify for that first mortgage. And so that goes hand in hand with the homeownership counseling program that I discussed in the previous bullet. And then as part of the HUD regulations, at least 1% of the purchase price of the unit must come from the resident's own funds. And that's one of those things that you have to show through proof of transactions in your bank account. The resident would have to, but at least 1% of that price has to come from the resident. Next slide, please. And so here are some of the discretionary features of our program. So these are all included in the homeownership plans that we put out there, but I'll just kind of hit on the big ticket items. So families must be at or above 60% AMI based on the family size, unless the family is currently living in the unit to be sold. So again, families that are currently living in the units, there's a couple families that fall into that category. They don't have to meet this requirement because they got grandfathered in. But any new families that are coming in would have to be between 60% and 80% AMI. And that really makes the program feasible. It wouldn't make sense for us to really target families below that because it becomes very difficult for families to qualify for a first mortgage if that's the case. And then we have a preference for our potential home buyers. So, when we do reach out to residents and we begin to develop a wait list and open a wait list, we actually plan on reaching out to the existing public housing residents first. So they get the first opportunity. If you're currently residing in a public housing property, you get the first opportunity to join the home ownership program and potentially become a homeowner. From there, if we don't find enough qualified applicants, then we would reach out to our existing HCV families. So that's a much broader pool of families. Over 12,000 families would be a part of that as part of that outreach. From there, we would bring on families. If we don't find enough qualified applicants from HCV families, we would formally open a wait list where anyone from the general public would be able to get on the wait list as long as they meet the income and program requirements. So we don't intend to reach that third bullet point, but that's certainly an option if we don't find enough families. We, as the Housing Authority, will facilitate home ownership counseling and lender engagement. So we have contacts with lenders as well as with home ownership counseling agencies. They offer online classes as well as in-person classes. So we will help facilitate that process. And then probably the biggest bullet point here is that we will provide down payment assistance via a second soft mortgage for up to 20% of the sales price. So that's a pretty great benefit for this program. And so basically that that soft second mortgage acts as really down payment assistance, and it provides a lot of equity for the family that would be purchasing the home, and makes it much more affordable, obviously, to qualify as a homeowner. And based on our current family data, about a third of our public housing or HCV families would be income qualified to participate. So we have a pretty good pool of families to draw from as part of this program. And I think I had mentioned before, but the city program currently has 2 homes, which are currently occupied, and the county program has 5 homes, and those are all in the city of Sanger. So any new participants that come in to the program and would like to participate when we do that outreach would have a choice of those specific 5 homes that are in the city of Sanger. With that, if there are no questions or no hands raised, I will pass it over to, I think it's Lyric.
I think you're muted.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, there you go.
So good evening. My name is Yolanda Kaiser, and I am an assistant manager with the Housing Choice Voucher Department. I'd like to personally thank our resident advisory board members, also known as RAB, for being here tonight, and to everyone who has provided feedback and shown interest in our administrative plan. Again, thank you. Okay, so the administrative plan with guidance from HUD consists of mandated requirements and also establishes local policies for the administration of the HCV program in areas, excuse me, in areas in which the PHA has discretion, excuse me. You'll find in the summary of changes that the items in yellow are staff recommended changes that impact policies and that would also impact admissions and eligibility. These are the ones that I'm about to cover. So Chapter 3 covers selection from the interest list for admission. In section 3.4.3, Fresno Housing adopted the reentry pilot program in its 2019 admin plan as means of allowing individuals formerly incarcerated to live with their families while receiving supportive services. The reentry pilot program proposes to increase the number of individuals to be admitted from 22 to 50. That would mean the program would allow 25 for the city and 25 for the county. In section 3.4.4, Fresno Housing is exploring the permissibility and feasibility of implementing a limited preference relating to workforce stability. The following is how it may be structured. The limited preference would apply to 50 vouchers in the city and 50 vouchers in the county. Referrals would come from partnering agencies who identify individuals through their employment and training programs as in need of housing stability to successfully complete training programs or to secure and maintain employment post completion of their training program. The details of criteria and referral process are to be outlined in the MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding with the referring partnering agency. So Chapter 6 of the admin plan covers income and rent determinations. In section 6.12.4, families whose income is extremely low often result in zero tenant portion or less than a $50 minimum rent. Those qualifying families can choose to temporarily suspend their minimum rent payment for 90 days. However, they are then obligated to sign a repayment agreement. At the end of 90 days, the minimum rent is imposed retroactively to the time of suspension. So the current policy requires that the family pay a minimum of 25% as an initial lump sum. And what we're proposing to change calls for a 10% initial lump sum in lieu of that 25%. Chapter 11 covers payment standards, rent reasonableness, and owner rents. Section 11.9 refers to amendments in the HAP contract when the owner requests a rent increase. So our current policy prohibits increases only within the first year of the initial lease term. The proposed change limits rent increases after the initial lease term and or after 1 year has lapsed from the prior lease amendment effective date of an increase to the HAP contract rate. That's a lot, I know. So bottom line, what that means is the owner can increase the rent at any time they want after the first year, and we would like to limit that number. So that's what this proposed change is covering. Chapter 18 covers owner or family debts to Fresno Housing. Section 18.4 covers, this change aligns with our temporary hardships that was mentioned earlier, where the family will pay 10% of the initial lump sum instead of 25. But in this case, it's for the repayment agreements where family's income was understated and now they have to pay back the HAP that was overpaid on their behalf. Section 18.4.6, we added additional language to include and clarify the due process pursued should the family not comply with the repayment agreement. Chapter 22 covers project-based vouchers, which is also known as PBV. In the PBV chapter, we kept language that covers eligibility requirements related to income and household screening in section 20.20.2 and moved the language that mentions applicant selection to a new and separate section that allows for adding more information about organizing the wait list for our specific PBV sites. The previous language was very general and a bit outdated. So as we have brought on additional PBV sites, we found it necessary to identify the separate criteria for each site, whether the site is specific to elderly or disabled, specific to veterans, or specific to individuals experiencing homelessness, etc. Chapter 28 covers emergency housing vouchers, also known as EHVs. So this new chapter will state policies and objectives of the new emergency housing voucher program. Fresno Housing has been awarded 161 emergency housing city vouchers and 137 emergency housing county vouchers. So on May 5th, 2021, HUD issued a notice PIH 2021-15, which described HUD's process for allocating approximately 70,000 EHVs to eligible housing authorities. And they also set forth the operating requirements for administering that program. So based on criteria outlined in that notice, HUD notified eligible housing authorities of the number of vouchers allocated to their agencies, and PHAs were allowed to either accept or decline the invitation to participate in the program. We, Fresno Housing, chose to accept those vouchers. So the EHVs will be used by Fresno Housing in collaboration with Fresno Madera Continuum of Care Servicing Partners to help assist individuals and families who are homeless, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, human trafficking, or were recently homeless or have a high risk of housing instability. The new chapter describes HUD regulations and PHA policies for administering the emergency housing choice vouchers. We are still in the process of finalizing the guidelines and the process as HUD implements new policies and guidelines. So the green text represents HUD regulation and or regulatory changes mandated per something called HOTMA, which stands for Housing Opportunities through Modernization Act of 2016. Chapter 1 covers statement of policies and objectives. So in section 1, we added the federally protected class to the section and added state laws that prohibit housing discrimination to include the new income source protection law that went into effect January 1st, 2020 with the passage of SB 329 and 322. The next slide is in blue. So the summary of changes that Lyric referenced earlier, they are all color coded in yellow, green, and blue. So the ones in blue, HUD allows PHA discretion on many policies. So the ones you see in the summary of changes in blue, again, are clarifications to existing policies or changes recommended by staff that don't impact admissions and eligibility, but would still need to be noted in the admin plan. We've categorized those proposed changes as either clarifications, changes to language, or streamlining or improved customer service. And with that, I will hand the mic over to Hilda.
Hi, my name is Hilda Reeves. I'm Assistant Director of Property Management, and I am going to go over the Acob changes. This is the plan that governs our low-income public housing units. The color coding is the same as what Yolanda went over. For the coming year, we don't have any significant changes that are being proposed. Here for the green, these are not necessarily significant changes. They are actually just clarifications to the policy. This is stuff that's already in place now. In chapter 6, we actually talk about our UA studies. So our utility allowances, the studies are completed at the beginning of the year, but we do not implement those for current families until their annual certification comes up. So January will come up with the new numbers. As you know, the UA changes, so does your rent portion. But we won't implement that until your anniversary date, unless a family requests a reasonable accommodation due to medical equipment. If that's the case, then yes, we will do an interim, and then we will change your rent on the 1st of the following month. In chapter 12, it refers to our transfer policy. Earlier this year, there was a change to the protected classes under federal fair housing laws. And so we've updated that language. We have added 3 categories: ancestry, gender identity, and gender expression to the list of protected classes that are actually listed on the policy. Still in chapter 7, this talks about the verification of income for different programs. During COVID, there were some waivers that were put in place that allowed us to use certain documentation that came from the family rather than waiting for a third party. Some of those we are allowed to implement or to keep, I guess, in the policy. And so we are going to be doing that. So it's basically the hierarchy of the information that we will accept as proof of income from somebody who is applying for new housing. Let's see, 7.14. We are adding a residency preference. So when somebody applies for our units, they have residency points for certain things that will push them up to the top of the wait list when we draw names. One of the things that we are adding is an adult member who is attending, basically attending college here in Fresno, right? So right now, if somebody in your family works in Fresno, or somebody already lives in Fresno, or has accepted a job in Fresno, those things all give you residency preferences. So now we are adding higher education. Somebody's coming to school here in Fresno. Chapter 9, re-exams. So right now, based on HUD regs, we are issuing several notices to families, notifying them of their anniversary date coming up. So we give them a notice 120 days before their anniversary date. We give them a reminder 90 days out. If they haven't come in to recertify, we give them another notice at 60 days. With the 60-day, we typically give out a termination, because if you're not coming in to recertify, we're not able to continue assisting you. So there is an error in the chapter now that says that we will terminate assistance, but with public housing, there is no assistance, it's just the housing itself. So that needs to be changed to terminating tenancy. But we are adding a 4th notice, so 30 days out. You'll get a 4th notice reminding you of that date. That's also going to be the one that comes with the termination of tenancy. So instead of 60 days, it's going to be 30 days. But residents are allowed to come in at any time during that 30 days, come in and certify, and that will invalidate the 30-day termination. Last one that we have for our Acob this year is again in the transfer policy. For those of you who are already living with us, you know that we've done a lot of conversions where we've had to relocate families temporarily while we either demolish and rebuild the current housing that they're in, or rehab the current units. And so during the time that families are relocated, we have to go out and find housing for them with third-party landlords. In some cases in another town. So when we do this in little towns like Selma or Huron, I think we've done it in Sanger, we don't always have enough housing in those areas to relocate families to. And so they've had to go to the next small town, and then that creates other issues with busing kids to school and that kind of thing. So what we put in the policy is that if we have public housing units available in that same town, that we as an agency can decide to use those for those families during that temporary relocation. So basically we would be skipping somebody on the wait list, but it's temporary. Once the unit is ready, those families will move back, and then that unit goes back into the regular pool. And I think that is the last one for our department.
Thank you, Hilda. I'll jump back in. So if you guys want more information on the agency plans that we just discussed, they are up for public comment period, as we stated earlier. They are on our website. I don't know, hold on one second. If I can open this, I want to show you guys how to access the page. It's going to be this link that'll take you straight to it, but I don't think it's going to allow me to. I'll share my screen in a second, but if you follow this link, it is provided in the meeting invite. It shoots you straight to the agency plan page, and it has all of the full documents as well as the summary of changes displayed on the page. It also has the email address on there that, like, if you guys want to ask any additional questions that you may not, ask on this meeting, Facebook Live participants, that is where you will shoot the email, with any questions or comments or concerns. So let me see if I can stop sharing my screen for 1 second and share my screen with you guys on the page. 1 second. Adam, while I'm trying to find this page for the residents, can you help with the Q&A?
Yes, you got it.
Thank you. I just want to pull up this one.
Juan, you have a raised hand.
Yeah, well, I actually was going to address one of the questions that was asked, and Adam, if you don't mind, I'll take this question really quick. I think I caught this after I had presented, but it was regarding the Homeownership Program. So Leticia Caldera asked the question, and I had mentioned that there are 5 homes that were available in the county. And she said, she asked, in the event that more than 5 families show interest, and with only 5 homes available, how are the final participants selected from all qualified applicants? It's a very good question. And so really the way it's going to work is that we would have a lottery system to choose interested families. So we may choose the first 5 families and determine if they're qualified. And so we qualify them as we draw them. Once we find enough qualified applicants, we would stop drawing names. So let's say 2 of the families, for instance, are not qualified. We would draw the next 2 family names, next 2 interested names, and continue to qualify them and deem them eligible and bring them onto the program. And we'd stop once we've have all 5 homes occupied and all 5 families qualified and ready to go for home ownership. I hope that answered her question in the chat.
And if anyone else has a question, use the raise your hand feature, or if you're on your cell phone, you can raise your hand using *9. Looks like Tania. Okay, go ahead, Tania.
Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Are you able to hear me? Okay. I had a couple of questions. The first question, and I don't know if I'm out of line, so just stop me if I am. I heard her mention about the HAP payments, or the payment portion of the new information that's being presented or whatever. I have a question about that in relation to universally. Is that going to change? Like, is that going to increase? Are you guys, kind of taking the temperature of the change in, the increase actually in what they're asking for rent out there, and how that's being approached? What's the thoughts behind that in relation to the housing choice voucher tenants? And then my second question is, did this housing program for purchase just restart? I know that it was a program quite a few years ago and was advised that they were no longer doing it. So did you just reignite this program? And like, how would a person go about signing up or whatever?
Sure, I'll address the home ownership question really quick, and then I think Yolanda probably pass it over to you for the HAP payment. No, we've had a home ownership program since the early 80s. And it really in the 90s was kind of at a peak. So we've sold several hundred homes through the programs. And HUD has kind of really stopped renewing these programs over time. So that's why the program is so small now. And it really, we aren't really, we're updating the regulations that cover the program now. But for a while, yeah, there wasn't much activity because families, the prior program was a little bit, was built like a lease to own program. So you would lease the home and you would build up a reserve over time. And so that program has kind of gone by the wayside, and HUD is kind of pushing for us to sell the remainder of our homes. But we do have to go through this process of converting the program, if you will, just these last 7 homes. I don't know if they'll kind of bring forward any new programs, any new home ownership programs. We're always on the lookout for any potential in that area. But yeah, it's kind of one of those programs that hit its peak in the 90s and has kind of gotten smaller and smaller, and HUD hasn't really renewed or marked any new homes for sale for quite some time. But when we do open them, we're going to submit this plan to HUD and they will approve it. And then from there, we would open up the interest list and we would, put that out for public. We get all the information out to the public as it becomes available for those families that would be, first on the list. And then after that, we'd reach out to, first would be the public housing families, then would be HCV families and so on. So we do all the outreach because we do have access to that information for those families. Hope that answers your question.
In regards to the HAP contract, and I believe that's what you're referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, regarding the owner rent increases. So yeah, the owner can request an increase once a year, or I'm sorry, after the first.
No, I'm sorry, that's not it. I wasn't asking about that. I was asking about the increase and the amount that you pay, that's paid for the property. For instance, I believe a 3-bedroom, I think, I could be wrong, but I think it's $1,630. And there is no properties really for rent at that amount. Like everything is about $1,800, maybe even more at this point. Well, not even maybe, but actually more. So I'm just asking, is there going to be an increase to that? Not necessarily the owners asking for a rent increase, an increase to the HAP, the payment standard. That's
Payment
the word
standard,
I'm looking for.
Yep. And that's a great question. Your timing is perfect. HUD has just released a new study where they analyze what fair market, quote unquote, is for the area. So they do their own analysis, and some new numbers have been released to us. What we do is we evaluate them. We do a deep dive into how it will affect the owners and the tenants. And if it's feasible to implement, we do. But we are actually in the process of reviewing those now. So you will most likely hear our results coming forward. And Juan, if you want to jump in on there.
Yeah, we did an increase effective April 1st of this year. So we did an increase. So if you go on our website, you can see the latest schedule, but Yolanda's right. HUD publishes it around August. They publish the fair market rents, and that's what really drives that payment standard. So yeah, we're analyzing that right now, and it's something that we HUD we have to make if we do make a change, we can make it effective as early as October 1st. So be on the lookout for something in the next, I'm going to say maybe 2 to 4 weeks, and we would
because the one in April is $1,630.
That's
and yeah, and so in looking, you're not, I found a 2-bedroom for 1,600, but I have a 3-bedroom voucher and you're not finding anything for $1,600. You'd be lucky if you find something at 1,800. But right now, what I'm seeing across the board is about $2,100 for a 3-bedroom.
Okay, that's good information. And when we do we do anticipate increasing that payment standard. The amount we haven't quite pinned down yet because we are, we do have HUD sets a pretty tight budget for us for our HAP payments, but we try and raise it as high as we can to help you guys out for sure.
And what we do is we typically compare it to our budget allocation, what we can afford basically, and still assist the most families. That the higher we raise the payment standard, the fewer vouchers that we can issue, only because we're using all of our budget to help to increase those payment standards. So we definitely take all of that into consideration. We do understand how difficult of a market it is right now, not only to find places, but the prices they are affording to those units as well. So it's definitely something that we will take into consideration.
And are there still grants from like the pandemic and stuff being applied, departmentally, as like you say, HUD and different industry, how it's affected across the board for all the, basically what you were just saying, affordability and helping families and different things like that? Or is that kind of like going away and getting back to pre-pandemic, ways?
So I think I'm not sure, maybe you're referring to the rental assistance programs. I don't know if that's something maybe you're speaking about, or?
No, just the different grants and stuff. Because I work at the city, I know that, so they talk about a lot of different grants that were, provided to different entities, especially ones that was kind of like, I'm not gonna say community-based, but stuff like HUD or low income and different things like that. Not necessarily the rental assistance, but the different industries that just received grants in order to be able to assist the public.
For us, the majority of our grants came in the form of assistance with our HCV as well as public housing programs. I can't speak to any particular HUD grants. There are some, like HUD came out with like an emergency housing voucher grant program that we will implement soon. That type of program, but I don't know that there's one that directly, where residents can directly apply for it, or, we as a housing authority can apply for it. So a lot of the grants are only available to local cities or counties. So the emergency rental assistance, I know we weren't talking about that one. That's a good example, is we actually weren't eligible to apply for it. We could administer it on behalf of a city or county, but we weren't considered applicants. And so some of those we're not allowed to, apply for those. But as we apply for anything we're eligible for, is really what our mission is here. So we do stay on the lookout for those grants. And so a good example was the Project Home Key grants that were given to the cities and counties. So we use those funds, work with the city and county to purchase motels and rehab those. So those types of programs we are heavily involved with. So, we go out after every dollar that's going to help our community.
Thank you.
Great questions.
We
Thank
also
you.
have a Q&A. Why is the home ownership homes only in Sanger?
Yeah, so we do have 2 in the city of Fresno. Those are currently occupied. But these are the remaining homes that we had from a home ownership program that started in the 90s. So I think they were spread out a little more back then. And what happened is that HUD didn't, they don't allow new units to be added to the home ownership program really. So those 5 in Sanger have been there on the program since the 90s, and families have come and gone. And so those are the kind of the last remaining pieces, from that time.
And we have a raised hand, Jay Anthony. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. One of my first questions was actually answered already, about the increase in the asking rates, pretty much not only citywide, but statewide. But the other question I had was, I know how we're talking about the homeownership in Sanger. Does HUD do anything with the Habitat for Humanity, where you can do, or something like that, do the sweat equity programs?
We have sold more recently. I think we participated in one Habitat home. I think it was earlier this year or late last year. But HUD doesn't have a really they're not very active in that space anymore. I think this is one of those things where back in the early 2000s, a lot of this was pre-housing crisis, so they were involved, and so they've kind of gotten away from that, and they actually just kind of stay away from single family home ownership in this space. But there are other programs through like the state. I think the state has a pretty robust the Cal HFA is the agency that does things for the state, where they actually provide down payment assistance for like first time home buyers, let's say, and they work with some of the bigger banks to help carry that out. So HUD, the federal government has kind of gone away from that, and it's really more of a state thing and kind of local thing. But Habitat, we do have just a very small footprint with Habitat, and we've partnered with them just on a few homes, but we really only gain properties on our portfolio when it's through HUD, because that's about where 90% of our funding comes from.
And then you were saying the homes in Sanger had been on the list for a while, and that there was 5. Are they like all like small? I mean, like any 3 bedrooms or something big, for family size? There's something else. Hold on a second. Let me think. But yeah, as far as the sizes of the houses in Sanger, what are we looking at? 2, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms?
They're all 3 bedrooms, and they range in size from 1,300 square feet to I believe we have one that's 2,000 square feet.
Okay. Oh, so they're fairly good sizes. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Most people weren't aware that you guys still doing that program. I like the person before me had heard you guys had discontinued the program, and so we didn't even ask anymore.
Yeah, it's been pretty inactive just because HUD, before we have to submit this home ownership program to kind of bring it back to life, if you will. That's the only way that HUD will allow us to continue it. So that's it. It's kind of been in limbo for a while. The homes have been used for other purposes as well here and there, but for the most part, we've just kind of working through all the administrative items so that we can get these back out in the market, get them into the hands of our residents.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like we have another hand up. I believe your name is Gonza. Is he unmuted, Adam?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Michelle, and my question is for Juan. Going back to the homeownership program, I know you said that you're going to be approved with lenders. Is that going to be a credit criteria to get approved for the homes? Or how do they approve you, even if you live in a low-income housing? I know you said that list is going to go first, but what if the person that makes an application, are they going to be denied of the credit? What do you guys basically look at to get them approved for the home?
Yeah, the lender would have their own process of qualifying. So that would include a credit check, income verification, probably some, they probably look at rental history as well, all the stuff that goes into that. And so that's kind of their process. However, we do work with lenders that specialize in this area. So maybe if families are on they have a lower income or lower credit score, I'm sorry, and maybe they're first-time home buyers, right? They also have access to other first-time home buyer programs. So we provide, I think I mentioned 20% down payment assistance, but the lenders also have contacts with maybe state programs that might also fill in some gaps. So they specialize in families that may be a little more difficult to qualify for mortgages. And that's really their area of expertise, but you do have to go through their process and work with their staff as well.
Okay, got it. And my second question was, being that you have a 20% gift, is that going to be on the home? Is it going to be a gift of equity, or is it going to be a second position lien? I know you're going to give funds, but I want to know, is it going to be a lien also? That means you can't refinance, you can't sell, because you guys are in lien position.
Yeah, it's going to be a second lien position, and the way it works is that the HUD rules say that if you sell the home within 5 years, let's say you sell it for a profit, right?
Yeah.
That you actually owe there's two pieces of it, the equity in the home, aside from the down payment assistance. So if you gain a profit, there's a little schedule that shows how much you would have to repay us from the profit. But the down payment assistance is forgiven over the course of 10 years. So after 10 years, it's free and clear. That second loan comes off, that lien is removed. And so you don't have to repay us. But if you sell within those 10 years, or you refinance, let's say, you would have to pay us back. There's a small schedule where it tapers off every 10% every year. So it gets to zero. You would owe a part of that down payment assistance. So there's two kind of parts to that. But yeah, the HUD prohibits us from selling it at a lower price and then allowing the family to flip it or refinance it, cash out, that type of deal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was all I had.
Juan, it looks like we have another question that came up in the chat. It says, you mentioned the 5 Singer home ownership homes have been there since 1990s and have had families move in and out of the home since then. So funding has been given for the same homes for every family that has applied.
No, so the program was a little bit different back then. Yeah, the program was a little bit different, where back then it was the family would come on and we would calculate their rents and it would be affordable to them. And a certain amount of that payment that they made to us would go towards a reserve, a down payment reserve. So they may be there for several years, or in some cases, many years, and they would accrue a reserve, and that would be used towards the down payment of the home. So it was a little bit different. And so families tended to stay on longer. Some families obviously didn't make it through the entire program. And so, we didn't give them that 20% then. It would accrue over time from some amount of money that they gave us from their rent.
Thank you. We do have a hand raised from a phone number. Adam, if you can allow them to speak, that would be great.
You are unmuted.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Hi. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my question is for also the homeownership program. When you are doing this lottery of picking the families, is it going to be based? I didn't hear this part when you were talking. I'm sorry, I came in a little late. But are you going to be looking at their income and seeing if they actually qualify to even be going into this home ownership program? Are you?
Yeah. So the slideshow that we had earlier stated kind of the income requirements, and it's basically 60 to 80% of the area median income based on your family size. So how many members you have in your family.
Okay.
So that would be one of the qualifications as well. And then we do a bunch of certifications as well as on your verifying income, verifying family members and relationships, and identity and that type of deal. And there's going to be a background check as well as part of our intake process, similar to like if you're joining the public housing program. But yeah, that would definitely be part of that.
Okay, I have a second question. How do I apply for this program? Once it becomes available for the home ownership program and you start doing this, how does someone apply?
When we're going to submit a plan to HUD early next year, and then once that plan is approved by HUD, so the plan is what's included on the public documents. And once that plan is approved, then we would start reaching out to families, first families on our public housing programs, and then potentially HCV families. So, you know, it's HUD has to approve of this plan that we put together before we can actually start bringing in new families to the program. And we'll do outreach to all residents that are you know, are on the list of qualified applicants.
Could we talk to our worker that's over the case or whatever to let them know that we're interested, so that maybe they would give us the opportunity to know when you guys are, you know, when it gets accepted, when it's, you know, open and you're now starting to view families for this and consider choosing them?
So for public housing, like we have everyone's address, right? Everyone that's in our public housing program right now. And those are the people that would get first dibs on it, if you will. So, you know, I don't think it's necessary, but we will send out communication to everyone via probably letter, postcard, and like a flyer, you know, something,
Yeah.
you know, something like that. So it would be communicated to everyone and probably posted at all of our sites, like the, you know, common, you know, offices at all of our sites.
Okay, well, that's all the questions I have, because all the other questions got answered already.
Juan, I was just going to say, a lot of times we do email blasts. So for our current residents, if they can go into Rent Cafe and make sure we have updated email accounts listed.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem. I do have a quick question for Lorena. She's our translator, our Spanish translator. I don't think that the participants can hear you. I'm trying to read the chat right now, and I did reach out to you privately. If you can hear me, can you reach out to Edgar Rodriguez or Adam and have them maybe promote you? If you're having technical issues, they may be able to help you as well. Okay, you are there. Okay, for some reason they can't hear you, so I don't know if you're on mute or not. I'm not sure. But you know, I don't see any more questions.
Okay,
Sorry,
I can hear Lorena.
You can?
She's
Okay,
on
perfect.
the Spanish channel now.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments regarding the agency plans before I jump to the website, because I do want to show you where you guys can access these documents? Okay, we do have another question. Her hand is raised. Tanaya Anderson. Adam will unmute.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead.
I'm a question asker. I'm sorry. I just like clarification.
You like questions? Go ahead.
I'll try to make it quick. I just wanted to know, in relation to, I realize that there's a process and you're just barely submitting the plan, but in that plan, are you including like more or less kind of like rotating individuals out of the, what did you call the first option of people?
Public housing families.
Public housing families and housing choice voucher families, where they might see a need, kind of like rotating out individuals that's been on this plan, on the housing choice or the public housing for quite some time, and kind of like getting them transitioned into the potential home buying program to allow other families to be on the program. Is that kind of like what part of the plan being submitted to HUD includes?
It just includes generally like, you know, here are a lot of the bullet points that I hit on before, but we don't expect like rotating. So when we bring in a family and they're qualified, we fully expect them to go through the home buying process, right? We want them to be successful. We're going to provide the home ownership counseling, or we or another agency would. So, you know, if let's say 5 families leave our public housing program in Sanger and they go into these homes, if all 5 of them became successful and became homeowners, that would be a victory for us. And, you know, that leaves 5 units for our regular public housing to be occupied by families that may need it as well. So, you know, I don't think we expect to have families rotating in and out of these single family homes. We want to get them in there and make sure they're qualified and get them set up with a lender and have them become homeowners.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions before we switch gears? If you are on a cell phone, you do have to press *9 to raise your hand. Just a heads up. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So before we end this meeting, I do want to share my screen to show you guys what the website looks like on the agency plan page and where you can access all of the documents that we're referring to. So 1 second. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm waiting for someone to say yes. So this is the agency plan page. It's all of our plans and policies. It is on the Fresno Housing website, and it's also in the link is provided in the meeting invite and the emails that were sent to all residents. So each plan is listed here, the admission and continued occupancy policy. You can click on more and read, the details of last year's plan, the annual plans. Last year's plan is also on here. Same with HCV admin plans. And then some of our other planning and policies, which isn't a part of the agency plan that we're discussing. But if you come down here to public comment opportunities, that is where all of the 2022 annual plan drafts are. So if you click on that, it kind of discusses, what our process is. It's on the street for 45 days, ends September 12th. If you would like to participate in the public hearing that'll take place on September 28th at our board meeting, you can click on this little link right here, and then it'll shoot you straight to the Zoom link, which will then allow you to listen into the board meeting and then allow you to speak if you need to. If you would like to set up a telephone appointment with me, you can do so by clicking this link, and then it'll allow you to make an appointment with me. Again, only appointments regarding the agency plans that we discussed today. Any personal issues won't be discussed. So just keep that in mind when you are booking an appointment. And then this is a 2022 public comment form, which basically if you're mailing in any comments, we would like you to use this public comment form. But other than that, you have all of the drafts here. So here's the annual plan drafts, the Acob drafts. And so I do want to click on one. Let me see if it'll allow me. I wanted to show you what it looks like. So this is the full plan. This isn't the summary, but this is kind of what we're referring to. This is the table of contents that Yolanda and Hilda were referring to, each section. So if you would like to, review the full drafts, they are available on our website, as well as the summary of changes in which were provided to you in the meeting invite. So just an FYI, I just kind of wanted to walk you guys through it in case you haven't visited the page yet. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to email agencyplans@fresnohousing.org or set up a telephone appointment with me. Again, all of those details were shared with all of our residents. I am going to stop sharing my screen now. After seeing that, does anybody else have any questions? I do see a chat. 1 second. Oh, are we on meeting for the next one? I'm not sure, Jay Anthony, what your question means. I think it was asking if we're meeting for another RAB meeting. We do have another RAB meeting set for September 1st. Again, if you have questions or comments that come up in the meantime after this meeting, feel free to jump onto that phone call. We love, more participation. The more questions, the better. The more comments, the better. Again, we are going to take the questions and the comments that we received today and share them with our board next week. But yeah, if you know of, anybody else that wants to participate next week that may not have been able to participate this week, next meeting, and wasn't able to participate in this meeting, we encourage you guys to let us know, and provide as much feedback as possible. Before I wrap up, does any of our staff have any last minute comments?
Just a thank you again for everyone for participating. We really appreciate your time. And any feedback you can provide, please do so in the method that Lyric provided. We will be sure to pay special attention and take them into consideration, but we really want your voices heard, as all of these policies and practices are here for all of you and the way we run our programs. So we definitely would love for you to provide feedback, and thank you again.
Thank you, everybody, for participating.
There is a raised hand, Jacqueline Henry.
Thank you, Adam.
Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Jacqueline, you there?
You should be allowed to speak on the microphone, Jacqueline. Yeah, it doesn't look like we're able to hear you. If you wanted to type your message in the chat, or as Lyric said, you could send a message through our website.
Thanks, Adam. With that being said, I think we are going to conclude this meeting. Again, if you guys didn't get your answers, or if you didn't get your answers that you needed, or if you have, additional comments, please go ahead and email us or make a telephone appointment. But other than that, again, thank you so much for participating in this meeting, and hopefully we see you guys again next meeting on September 1st. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, sir.
Good night.